Dasha is a design researcher, architect, and planner, working in the intersection of social and physical dimensions of space. She is a participatory design specialist, experimenting with design processes in infrastructure and public space projects. Dasha worked across professional cultures and geographies in Serbia, Netherlands, UK, Australia, Belgium, Indonesia, and Fiji, and is able to combine theoretical and practical knowledge in bringing various stakeholders into the design process. In this episode, we discuss about her projects with Arup on playful cities design, placemaking for children, and her PhD research project, and we get to know her more. Assalamu alaikum and hello everyone. I am Azban Sari, the founder of the organization Peacemakers Pakistani, and I am bringing you the stories of placemakers, artists, and professionals from around the globe about how they created an impact and made change happen. You are listening to the Making It Happen show. Thank you for joining in. Enjoy the episode. Hi Dasha, thank you so much for joining me today. How are you and how's life going?
Hello, thank you for having me. I'm really honored because I think your organization is doing some amazing things. You caught me in a transition period, so it's my week between two different jobs, and I'm glad we can have this discussion about all these different experiences. So life has been turbulent, I would say.
I'm so glad that even amidst of this turbulent times, you found time for this, and I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for that. And I'm looking forward to hearing from you everything, and to furthermore, like to build a relationship with you later on as well. I'm looking forward.
Me too.
Great. Okay, so I love your background. Would you like to talk about it?
Sure, I can mention. So um, I really like to kind of think through making things. So I've been making these boats in the last few weeks, or maybe more than that, because there were many failures before I managed to do this. As always, we test stuff. So it is. I'm helping my little community here in London. We are having a dance performance, and this will be part of the stage. So my whole flat is full of these things at the moment. So that's why that's the background. It's a type of boat, some boats, kind of paper made boats. When you make boats of paper, but you just enlarge them. So I made them look like they were made by children, because children will be bringing them to the stage. So it's not my primary work, but I think it's things we like to do. I guess we think through these different types of little tasks.
Yeah, I'm loving it because these such creative activities are very important, and like it fuels the energy, I guess. It's part of you.
Yes, and it makes you, at least me, it made me really slow down, because you cannot do this quickly, and it's so different when you build stuff with your hands than when you just build things on your computer digitally, because it's a different way of thinking through problems. Of course, some things that come from my design background, like the power of triangles, that always comes useful. But when you try to make them work in reality, it's always harder. I think I love making models. Even through my studies, making models was always important, super important for my process.
Lovely. I love it. Okay, so let's begin with your questions and see how it goes. Okay, so how did you find your passion for public spaces and participatory design practice?
Yeah, so it all started during my studies of architecture in Belgrade. I'm originally from Serbia, from Belgrade. And I was very lucky to be in a group of amazing colleagues, and I had an amazing professor, Professor Ivan Kucina. He's still one of my really dear friends and kind of idols in this space. Um, so during our last 2 years of studies, during our masters, kind of, we have formed a small group called School of Urban Practices. And through this group, we did a lot of small projects in public spaces in Belgrade. They were kind of like activist projects. So we would get some small funding, or very often we would have no funding at all, but we would gather and go to different parts of the city in different neighborhoods, and then try to do stuff with people in our city, in our public space, which was not that common at all, and it was so precious to be able to, as a student, to have this practical experience of building something out there with people who are not in your head, but they're actually real people. So I think Professor Ivan, he had this great idea to actually help us to get real experience through this group, School of Urban Practices. So that those were the beginnings, and all my memories from that period are super precious. It wasn't easy, but I was learning so much. I think that completely formed what I will do later in life.
Awesome. Like, the way you were expressing it, and I felt that, okay, so this is the right thing to do for our students. Like, as an organization, if we offer this thing to students, I hope they appreciate it as well. And this gives an encouragement to do it, actually.
Mm.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't always easy. We were working in mainly in this neighborhood called Salamala, which was a neighborhood in the city center which was getting through a lot of transformation at the time. So there was a lot of actually a little bit after our time, there was a lot of demolishing of old structures, old little houses. It was something like a poorer area, so to say, on the riverbank, and the new development was coming. So a lot of those urban structures were demolished, so big new skyscrapers could be built. And we were coming just before that period. So many people were already quite anxious about the change that is going to happen. They did not know if they're going to be transferred somewhere or not. Um, and also, even though we tried to work together with local authorities, we couldn't always tell them what's going to happen, because not even people in the city sometimes knew, what change is coming. So it was very difficult to actually manage that. But we could do smaller things, like, for example, creating temporary spaces for summer, for example, where people could gather and use the public space together. So we could then reformulate this time frame for which some part of a city would be activated, and then work with that. So it's always within the limitations of something, but I think as long as you can define those limits, time limits, or project limits, you can be you can feel that you are promising something to people that you can actually create, that you can deliver.
Right. It makes sense so much. Great. And so you have been working with people, in the participatory process. So what were the challenges and opportunities in this area, and what age groups were it more easy or more challenging to work with in all of these processes?
Mm. Yeah, so since that time in Belgrade, I actually focused so much on participatory design, and I would say that is my I'm an architect, but I really specialize in participatory design processes. So I worked after that in the Netherlands, in Belgium, in the UK a lot, in Indonesia, in Australia, in Fiji, so in many different contexts and different cultures. So what I would say, what is the most important when it comes to this is specificity. So every time it it matters so much that you understand who you are speaking with, and what is the purpose, who is the audience, and then to think about how would you design the mode of working together with these people for this purpose. So I would say the challenge comes when you don't understand your audience, when you don't know who they are or their culture, how they communicate, or when you don't know your purpose, why are you there. And the challenges appear if you don't distill answers to those questions.
Amazing. Like now that you're saying it, I can feel that we need to learn and pay attention to these things, that how to understand your audience and then approach them from that perspective. And it's important
Yeah, totally.
participatory processes because um, personally, like I used to struggle, and before I wasn't aware of it.
I used to blame the audience that they are not getting the point. But now,
Mm,
after these years of understanding things and learning from people like you, and also myself, like observing my own patterns, I realized that participatory or the process that we use to involve people plays a great role in it.
mm.
Right?
Yes, there is I think there is also this. It's a big topic in participatory design. This difference between the expert knowledge and the everyday knowledge, how we call it, lived experience knowledge. So people who have knowledge through what they experience in their everyday life, whether it's about spaces or how they do things or their contacts, and then you as an expert, and then how do you put these two knowledges together? As you said, sometimes I would blame the audience that they don't know. It's because you want to bring your expert knowledge and to tell them, look, this is how it should be, but you also have to understand where they're coming from. And I think that is where the kind of art, if you want to call it like that, is to kind of combine these two things. And the third one, which people don't really speak about that often, is, as you said, also this self-reflection and how you bring yourself into that discussion. Your way, um, your ability to observe, to understand, to really listen what is someone telling you. And there are some amazing academics that write really nicely about this. Professor Ann Light and Yoko Akama. So I suggest that you read some things they write about, because they write about this a lot. How you need to approach situations as a participatory designer to really be able to be sensitive to these things.
Thank you. And yes, I will read about them and the way they have taught this thing. And also, it's so true. And with understanding, I have realized that it has built a lot of compassion in me towards people and towards myself as well while we learn new things. So, and it's so fulfilling. Like I found joy in this whole process of working with the community. So,
Mm.
the shift from architecture to community building has been a great shift, and I'm very grateful for it. So, yeah. Okay, and also one thing that I have realized during this process is that play is very important. Like when we are connecting with people on soul level, and it has always been easy when we were doing something fun or we are being playful in any way. So, what inspired you towards the playful city design in terms of city planning, like
Mm.
in the public spaces areas? And which group are you personally passionate about, and what were the challenges in those areas for you?
Yes. So that's a great question. Play is something I have been working on maybe in the last 3 4 years, I would say. Play in public spaces, in urban spaces, but also play in the way in which we approach our work. So how do you also collaborate with your colleagues in a playful way? Play is so important, and I think we really um, maybe we simplify it too much. It's a very complex topic, and I have been working mainly on it while I was at Arup. And together I was really lucky that we collaborated a lot with Lego, and with other organizations, with Placemaking X, with um, National Geographic, with IKEA, so with a lot of organizations that with UNICEF, where play is very important. And through this work, especially with Lego, I learned from the experts to observe and to understand play through the development of our skills. So while we play, we throughout our life, it doesn't matter if we are 6 months old or 12 years old or 37 or 75, right? We still keep developing skills. And those skills fall into five main categories. So physical skills, and usually when we say play, this is what people most often think about, like sports, right? Like we use or walking or running or basketball. Like we use physical type of play, developing physical skills to play. But it's not only, there are four more. So cognitive is the second one, which is about learning. So what are we learning through play? And that can be wayfinding. So, for example, when we talk about placemaking, how do you find your way in a specific street or in a specific part of the city? That can be also part of a play. You know, how do you find your way around? Cognitive can also be understanding some principles. Like, for example, imagine having a square where you have a big water fountain and little children running around to understand why is this water now coming from the ground? How is it going up? So they're learning about some concepts about gravity, about pressure, etc. So cognitive would be about learning. Then the third one, emotional play. So how do we connect with our emotions and understand what we do? That can be maybe being nostalgic about something, seeing something in public space that reminds us of something. Maybe for me, I live in the UK, but I'm not from here. So when I see something familiar, a familiar tree, that's for me emotional way of playing, for example. Creative, when we create something alone or with others. And the final one, the fifth one, is social skills that we develop. So communicating with others. Yeah, we can play with others in so many different ways. Sometimes verbal, sometimes non-verbal, sometimes on a distance, sometimes being super close together. So when we observe play through these skills, we then see that there is so much that we can improve in our public spaces to enable this play to happen. Because it's equally important for us when we are seniors, like senior citizens that go out for their daily walk because it's important that they stay active, or as they go to the supermarket or marketplace, for example, as it is super important for super young kids, like 3 years old children, for example. And then finally, what we have been researching lately in Arup as well is this concept of nature-based play. So how do we connect nature with playing? Because this is what is more and more disappearing from our cities. And nature-based solutions, that is a concept about developing our cities and urban places in a way that mimic nature in one way or another, to enable more nature to come back to our cities. They are very equivalent and can be connected a lot with different types of play, and for different ages and for different skills. So that kind of nature-based play can be very beneficial, both for nature positive outcomes and for also all these social and community outcomes that we want to kind of produce. And just to close by going back to your question before was, if we think about what architects historically have not been very observant about and good at, it's two things. If you think of a typical architectural drawing, usually there are no people, or there are some people that are not always diverse, that are not of different age, of different ability or ethnicity, right? Like we always use the same cutouts templates. So people. And the second thing, I don't know if you ever thought about that, but you know how when you see a section of a building, the ground is always one line, one thick line, right? That we show the soil. But actually that line means so many things in real life that we as architects, we don't really understand the ecology of things around us very well. So one is people and one is ecology. And because that soil contains so many organisms, so many different nutrients, different connections that communicate between each other. And excuse me, as architects, we intervene in these spaces. So we need to understand, I think still in this age, in 2024, we need to understand much better how to both communicate our architecture and cities with all these different types of people, and then all these different types of other organisms and ecology. So yeah, I think I probably went into 5 billion digressions now.
These are so important points, and like I really appreciate the work that is being done around playful cities design globally, and the way it's being paid attention to, and not just in terms of physical play, but the points that you have mentioned clearly. And Arup work has been so amazing in this regard, and you put it you put it in such a so you have explained it in so much briefly. I would say that in an articulate manner that anybody can make sense out of it if they pay attention to it. And I and playful design and all these skills, if we put in all different fields of profession or like in different professional fields, I think the outcome can be very great. Like if even if we teach architecture in a playful manner, like keeping all these skills in mind, I think we can come out of we can bring more better results out of it. I think like your your last answer was about ecology and people together, and that's so true because we are more focused on the form and how it will look on the outside, but we are not seeing that how it's going to interact with different people and the different object like different organisms and ecology, and also the environment, local material, and how it's going to respond to it. I see a lot of things that people make a design or form and then they find materials whatever will make bring it to reality instead of starting with the material and forming something out of it. you know
Yes,
and that would be
100%.
so much playful if we use that, picking up the material and then making something out of it. And also the decision of what material is going to be there has to be sustainable, and also
Yes.
it shall respond to people, that I would say. So
Mm.
yeah, these points are so
Yes,
important
and
to discuss and consider.
yes, maybe I can also direct the your listeners to two publications that I also was part of in Arup. So one is Play for All, Playful Cities Design Guide, and if you just Google that and Arup, it is an open source publication. So through that, we explored how can we bring more play into different types of public spaces. So from museums to squares and sidewalks and parks and train stations. So there are 15 different types that we kind of globally identified. And then another one is nature-based play, where we exactly explore this concept that I told you about on case studies around the world, and we kind of examine what they did and then propose some actions on how all of us can do more on this topic: nature-based play and play for all.
Yes, and these are both are very amazing because I used to study from different sites, and this whole were comprised like it was all compiled together in this two publications, and I loved it. So, how would you
Mhm.
emphasize the role of built environment in play and learning resources for children and ultimately their health and growth?
Yeah, so this is extremely important, and there are many organizations that work on this very extensively. So maybe the most important one is Bernard van Leer Foundation that has a lot of resources about this, and we were also very lucky to work with them on a project called Proximity of Care. And in this project, we explored what would be the impact of built environment on children who are very young, so 0 to 5 years old. Because in this period is extremely important for any child, for any human being, because in this period we develop not only all our organs and our kind of physical health, but also all our brain connections and kind of emotional, social, creative, all the other connections that we create between inside of ourselves, between us and our parents, between us and our neighbors, and then also between us and our environment. So again, those other organisms. And it has an enormous impact. So there has been a lot of research and a lot of evidence-based research that shows the importance of this influence. And there are, of course, many things that we can do to improve the condition that we all grow up in. First one, not first one, but the first thing is always health. So how can we improve health in our cities? And that again comes back to nature. So improving the quality of air, the quality of water, and then also mental health, right? How do we improve the quality of our connections?
That's so true. And play is very important in this, I think, because in a lot of ways, I have landed onto the topic of play. Also, I read previously that if someone is struggling in any opportunity of playing, that means they're struggling on their mental health level. And it was like a boom moment for me because at that time I was struggling myself and I knew that I had some problems. So I'm so
Mm,
happy that I've recovered from it and I'm able to play again. But still, I have sometimes I do struggle, and it's easier to identify the reasons why now. So
mm.
this is amazing, and yes, built environment plays the role. I used to. There was a time that when I was hyper focused on making change by my own. Like I was holding myself responsible for the struggles or the problems that I'm having in my life. And at that, like with all of these lessons and learnings, I realized that no, it's not always a person's fault. It's also like the opportunities that a city has to offer. And
100%.
so the management and the authority has to be held accountable for not providing these to people. And that's where we realize our role as professionals to highlight these points. So it has been a lot of learning and unlearning, and I'm so grateful for it. And thank you
Mm.
so much for all the work that you guys are doing as well. And the seniors, I would say, in these areas, internationally and locally as well, because they are helping us realize that these things are important, it has to be taken care of.
Mm. Yes, do you know? Because I organize many workshops on play in this period, and with different ages. And actually, it's really surprise. It doesn't surprise me anymore, but it's very common that when you ask adults how do you play, they look at you and they laugh at you like, no, my kids play. But then when you start probing them a little bit, then they realize actually how much play is present even in our life. But because we connect play only with children, we forget how much we play in the everyday life. I'll share with you a few things, a few ways in which I play, but I want to also ask you to tell me how you play in your everyday life. So for me, for example, one is gardening. I joined a local neighborhood group where we arrange, because I live in a flat, I don't have a garden, but we arrange a little public space. Literally, it's a little triangle in between streets. So it's not big at all, but we arrange it together. So that's one way. Another way is when I use Tube, which is a metro in London, metro system. I notice that I always, depending on where I go, because London is so huge. Like even though I live here now for almost 3 years, I still have to look at Google Maps because I don't find my way around. But sometimes for some routes, I know some places I take regularly, right? So I play this game in which with myself, right? In which I think about which door in a train I need to enter. So, and which seat in a train I need to take more or less. So when I get off that particular on my stop, I can be close to the tunnel that takes me to the exit or to my next train. So I play this game of calculating, the seats in the train and think like no one. Some people maybe would not call it a game, but actually it all happens in your head. But you kind of behave playfully in a way.
Yeah,
Do you have an example?
I'll bring you to awareness, right? Okay, so now that you have asked me, one way I play a lot, I don't go out much because of the reasons I told you before that it's
Yes.
no struggle, So within my own home, in our porch, I love to play with the nature, especially
Hmm.
skies. Skies are my favorite. Like any change in the sky, I love doing. I love that. I talk to the moon. I play hide and seek,
Amazing.
things like that, and with the sun as well. And I have such playful conversations in my head. That's something which is weird, and I never discuss it with anyone. But now that you have mentioned, so I'm having the encouragement to do it. I love seeing the clouds doing it. Like I find everything is playful when I allow myself to have this idea or this observation in my head. So whenever clouds are moving around, so I play. And now that I have a toddler in my home, my niece, so I try to get her in this process that, see, that's moving around. Oh my God, this is happening.
Yes.
Oh, that's playing with you.
I,
So yeah,
I also speak with the moon. I think that's completely normal. Like I think we need more encouragement around us that this is something we should do. And imagine if our built environment gave us all these little cues that tell us this is what you should do. Remember, this is what your grandma told you about. Remember this, remember that. Because unfortunately, these things are disappearing more and more from our lifestyles. This kind of connection with nature and connection with each other. I've been to a literature festival a week ago, and I saw this amazing book. I think it's called, I forgot, I don't know the writer, but the title is something Lost Words, and they have discovered the words that kids of today's generation don't know anymore, those words, even though the kids from previous generation knew it. Like, and those are always like names for birds or names for different plants, because in the past little children were much more in contact with nature, but now because we all live in cities, you don't know how to recognize anymore specific leaves or specific birds. And I think it's really sad. We really need to actively work to bring these lost things back, like your discussion with your niece about changes in the clouds. I think that's amazing.
thank you. Yes. And also that it was passed on to me from my mother because she used to do this. And I took a way step more, I guess, in the way I do it. Because it's always a playful conversation. Also, that what I know about people in Pakistan, like we are so we play banters around it. Like we say that, like if we are having a conversation, even in a professional manner, there will be one joke around for sure. Like people can't have a conversation without being playful or without being humorous. So, and I cherish that. Like it's fun to have such conversations. So that's one more way because it helps build our social skills, and I love that as well.
Mm.
Yeah. So there's a lot of things that does happen on a daily basis that are keeping us going forward in life, but we don't pay attention to it. And right now, talking about it with you is a happy moment for me. Thank you for asking, sharing as well. Okay, so what was your experience? How was your experience at Arup, and what sort of projects were you doing there?
Yeah, it was really great. Arup is a big firm, the biggest place I worked. So what is really great about it is that it has, I think, many thousands of employees all around the world, in literally on every continent and almost every country, like in many countries. And just being able to contact people that work on different technical things in different parts of the world was incredible. So, for example, I worked with people in Latin America, in Asia, in Africa. Yeah, it was great. And the topics I worked the most, one topic I would say, is the topic of inclusive cities. That I worked the most with. Inclusive cities in terms of inclusive of different abilities, of different diverse people, diverse groups. And I already mentioned a few projects. So there was a lot on play and a lot on childhoods, so child-friendly cities. Also a lot on nature-based solutions, and a lot on climate change. So how can we work and contribute to have nature positive outcomes out there? And maybe I would give an example. It also kind of provides an example for things that we spoke about before. I really enjoyed working on that proximity of care project, where we worked with 3 incredible studios, design studios, that I would also invite your kind of listeners to check them out because they're so good. One is called Espacio Ludico, which means right, playful space. And this one is from, they work in Chile and Uruguay. The other one is Ciudad Emergente, which means emerging city, and they are from Chile. And the third one is Estudio Mais Sum, which is from Brazil. And with them together, we worked on little interventions in public space that can benefit children 0 to 5 years old. And maybe I'll tell you of one of them, one of those projects. Um, which one? Maybe the one from Uruguay, which was called Sensing the City. By the way, if you visit that page, proximityofcare.com, you have all the material there, and all is also open source. A lot of different tools, a lot of different case studies. So it's really great if you study early age development and urban space. So together with Espacio Lúdico, we worked in Uruguay, in Montevideo, and there we were designing a square that was nearby a school for deaf children. So we were engaging with deaf community, and they were asking a question of how can you design public space so it becomes more inclusive for deaf communities, because we don't really, as urban designers, we don't really think of that category, right? We don't really think about how would a child who cannot hear cars, that cannot hear sounds, feel safe in the public space, feel safe to cross the road, feel safe to play, especially when you know that not many people who are not deaf actually speak sign language, right? So there were so many challenges in this project, from how to organize a design workshop with children who are deaf and you don't speak the sign language. So we had to kind of develop a system with Espacio Ludico about how do we design these workshops, to what could we actually do in public space that can make them feel more included and more belonging there, not just because they usually then play either in their special school or in their house, but they don't really go out that much at all, or mix with children who are not deaf. And the project was a huge success. The whole local authority, different departments were involved. It's really interesting how once when you make an issue visible to people, how much more active people are then in engaging on how to deal with that issue. So it's so important that you know how to ask a question, or how to tell something to others, so they can then create actions together toward that. And that's what Espacio Ludico did amazingly. So they organized this event, like a little symposium on that square, where they proposed changes to the built environment. They highlighted the communication issues that these children are facing. One example, for example, that probably we also didn't think about. We didn't think about it before we started asking questions, but sidewalks are usually narrow in that area of the city. And if you're using sign language, you constantly have to have a visual connection with another person, right? To show with your hands. And if two people cannot walk together on a sidewalk, then they can't talk, they can't communicate. They have to stop, turn around, and then communicate, and then keep walking. So just having a bit of a wider sidewalk, so it's not a big change, right? But a wider sidewalk where people who use sign language can actually walk and talk at the same time would be a huge benefit for the acceptance of, for the inclusivity towards these groups. So that was one example.
So awesome. Like while hearing from you, it was making me feel that experiencing and having such exercises build so much compassion in one. Like only just hearing your story it built compassion in me towards the people who has this disability, and I believe like we have attended a few classes with people like that, and it built compassion in us and also inspiration, like how they have different abilities that we don't have. There something is in some qualities then, like the way they understand things, the way they're patient with other people and with themselves to learn and encourage, and they keep moving forward. So such exercises are so important to be done. And
Mm.
like now we are having the conversation, and we can feel that it's not just about public spaces or the tangible places or a space. It's all about people and their connections,
Mm.
and how we are facilitating it through a tangible place or space.
Yes.
Yeah, so I love these things in these podcasts that we arrive at, and I love having this conversation. So thank you so much. Okay, so what are the challenges and opportunities in UK that you see, and also that you have lived in Serbia. So both places, if you like to mention.
Yeah, what because I also did my so I was born and raised in Serbia. Then I studied a little bit in the UK and the Netherlands, and then I did my PhD in Melbourne. So I spent 5 years there and working in Indonesia, and now I'm back in the UK as I work here. So I changed quite a few contexts, and I would say each comes with its own challenges. It's really different. Challenges that I encountered in Indonesia are so different than challenges here in the UK or in Serbia. And and whenever we approach public space, we have to approach it through this context. So which is both challenges in the physical spaces, like for example, in Indonesia, a big problem was flooding, whereas in the UK, big problem is something else, right? That I will tell you in a moment. But um, so the challenges can be coming from physical space, but they also come from structures in governance. So in politics, in economy, in ways of financing projects. So all these things are extremely important, and we can't tell them apart if we want to do a good project. Um, in the UK, lately, I've been working on again on health in cities. So I mentioned some of the playful projects, but we are now bringing this together with active travel. So I was working with a great team. I will mention my colleague Natalie that I really love working with in the city of Doncaster, which is a city in the northern, a bit north in England, a small city, and we have been working on an active travel master plan, which means active travel can mean anything in which you need to use your energy to move. So it can be bicycle and cycling, it can mean walking, it can be about wheeling, which is either in a wheelchair or maybe little kids using scooters. It can be skateboarding, it can even be horse riding, right? It can be anything that does not involve cars. And why is this a problem in the UK, and I'm sure in many other places, is because our cities have been built for cars, unfortunately. So we then go into these smaller towns where still so many people live, so many people grow up, and everything has been built for cars. This massive infrastructure of big streets, a lot of cars, is just everywhere, and people then don't really use their bodies, which is what we should do, to do things in their neighborhoods. So they don't, they don't walk around, they don't cycle. Children go to school, even though the school is 5 minutes away, they go in a car. Parents drop them and then they pick them up. And that does not only affect our physical health, but also affect our sociability and the way we communicate with others, because we don't use the outside spaces. So that's one of the big challenges that we have been dealing with. How do we then redesign those bits and pieces and try to somehow connect these disconnected parts of a neighborhood, because they're disconnected by these big motorways and car carriageways. So how do we connect them so it's much easier? It's actually normal to walk around. So it's normal to cycle. You feel safe. You feel it's part of your everyday life, which it is in some countries like in the Netherlands, which is amazing.
Yes, and okay, so I would like to appreciate here that the way you are talking about it in such a compassionate manner and in a very subtle way, and the way we talk about it here are more from the air from the emotions of frustration, actually. But because we have seen a sudden shift from a lot of things towards a car-centric design, and we are trying to just digest how it's happening and at a greater speed it is happening. But yeah, I think people who are realizing this thing are actually trying to raise voice about it. And I'm not sure how it's going to go in the near future or in the long term, but it's happening. And the way you mentioned that a lot different modes of transportation or different modes of movement should be encouraged and should be involved in the process. And that's a positive point. And the problem that you mentioned about UK, I think UK still has a lot of opportunities like sidewalks. At least they have them. I think so. Like from the pictures we see and the people we talk to, there are still some human elements about pedestrian movement, which we lack here. And looking forward to having this in Pakistan as well. So, yeah, focusing on one aspect is better than focusing on different at the same moment and then losing track on only one, right?
Yes, and both, active travel is also something that can connect play as well, because those routes can be playful, very playful, or some moments on the route, on the walking route, for example, you can design a playful way. And active travel is, I think, a powerful concept because it connects health with urban design.
Yes, exactly. Because the way you were mentioning things, I was having a clue about a lot of places in Lahore even that lack this thing, and if it can be addressed to this, because it involves health and urban design both, and comfort as well. Like if you try to build facilities, it goes all around, and a lot of transformation can happen. Great.
Mm.
Okay, so would you like to talk about your research project, revitalizing informal settlements and the environments, and how did you come towards the water sensitive design?
Sure, yes, that is definitely a super important project for me, because it's a project on which I did my PhD. So maybe also useful for if some students are listening to this. If you're coming from an architectural background, you can do two types of doctorate research. So one is traditional one, and the other one, which is what I did, is design led or design based. And many actually, departments of architecture around the world offer these types of PhDs as well, on which you work on a practical project, and what you design, what you create, um, comes kind of together to things that you write about. You write about it as well, and then both of those different things count towards your degree, your doctorate degree. So that's what I did. I worked for 5 years on revitalizing informal settlements and their environments, RISE project, and the things I did there. That's how I got my doctorate degree, but also I contributed a lot to the project, and for me, it gave me so much learning and so much joy to work on a real project like that. So that project was in Indonesia and Fiji, and it was again using nature-based solutions, so to say, nature-based systems such as water-sensitive design. I will explain now, to try to bring them into informal settlements and to see how will those systems improve the health of both people and environment. So the RISE project is very complex. It involves more than 100 people working together on it. And I will mention who are these people because that was important for the thing I did. So we had groups of different scientists. There was a mosquito expert that would see how would the mosquito breeding sites change if you bring more water sensitive design. There was a rodent expert, which is like rats, different types of rats and mice. So exploring whether there would be more rats in informal settlements because of the wetlands or not. There was a bat expert. There was a urban temperature kind of a heat map expert that was measuring the temperature in those slums before and after, kind of. There was a water quality expert. There were so those were the types of kind of environmental scientists. Then we had the group of health scientists, so people who were measuring intestine kind of health of small children and mothers, and they did that by examining their stools to see what kind of bacteria and things they have inside, because believe it or not, but in those informal settlements, hygiene and health are so important. More children 0 to 5 years old die of diarrhea than if you would combine HIV, measles, and other diseases altogether. So diarrhea is actually causing much more death in these settlements. So understanding how children become sick through their hands and through touching different things and eating different things is really important. So they were examining that. So we had a lot of health scientists. Then we had a lot of engineers, water engineers, who were very concerned about how do we capture all this wastewater in the informal settlement? How do we connect it? And and how do we make it cleaner? What kind of system we need to introduce to make this water cleaner so the environment becomes cleaner, so children become less sick. Then we had a lot of experts that were about electricity. So how do we connect these pumps so they don't become more expensive to people who live in these settlements? And then we had residents of these settlements. So we had people who live there, who are all different tribes, different ethnicities, different cultures. Some of them were Muslim, a small amount was kind of Christian, and other groups that moved there. Some were migrants, some were living there forever, some had land rights, some did not have land rights. So very different groups of people who lived there. And then we had also local authorities, so mayor elections, political changes, etc. So many different people about designing nature-based solutions in these settlements. And my role was to design a participatory design strategy for the design of some first half of settlements in Indonesia and Fiji, but then later I focused just on Indonesia. And that, as you can imagine, was very hard, but also very rewarding in the end.
Wow, it's such an awesome project to work on. And like, you were not just doing something and getting from it the degree out of it. You were actually contributing to a great cause and such a wholesome project, a lot of research and actual people working on it. The professionals are working on it, and I believe the outcome must have been amazing and so much awareness
Yes.
around this. How much people have been educated, and I'm grateful for you for doing it. I would love
You're
to
so kind.
read more about it, if it's
Yes, please do read. There is this Rise website which is like a general hub, but also if you go as part of my PhD, I produced like a little online exhibition. So if you Google entangledwithwater.com altogether, that's where you will be able to hear a lot of stories from my PhD. But I would like to mention my local team from Indonesia, so Icha, Intan, Ilham, Anto, Pakisan, and the others, who are based still in Makassar, in the city where we worked, and we worked very closely together. So they became like a family to me, and only together with them we were able to actually design this so it works. So I think maybe my biggest I would say accomplishment, if we can call it like that, my biggest satisfaction was that I met these people, and that together with them throughout all these years we could develop methods for participatory design that are not something that was in my head. It was actually something we really did together, because you know what was challenging? I could not bring methods I knew about from Serbia or from UK and say, this is what we're going to do, because those things would not work in Indonesia. We had to develop together some new things that would actually engage those people that live there, that they can understand, that they can connect with. One example is we organize these activities in the morning. In Indonesian, they're called Senam Bersama, which means healthy together, which is part of their usual, like something that happens nevertheless in any city in Indonesia. So in any neighborhood, usually in the morning they would play music, and that music can be either modern music, K-pop, or it can be traditional music from different regions from Indonesia. And there would be one person who is standing in front of everyone and showing some moves, some dance moves. And then the whole neighborhood would come out in their gym clothes, like trousers and, whatever they would do, hijabs, everything they would wear normally to the gym. And then they would kind of exercise or dance together with that person who is showing the moves. So what we did as part of the design workshops is that we organized the same thing. So we kind of organized these dancing sessions before big workshops, in which me, who was a white person there, obviously not belonging there, but I put so much effort together with the team in learning those steps from different regions, so that I can show it to people in a very probably funny way, because you can imagine how embarrassing that was. But the point of that was that I wanted to show to them okay, this is also uncomfortable for us. We want to learn about you. We want to learn about your culture. We are also failing. We also don't know what we are doing. It's, it's tricky, but we are here to do this together with you. So by allowing yourself to be vulnerable and to come into that communication in such an open way, emotionally open way, you allow them then in the next design session in which we speak about their settlement to also open to you and to say, yes, we are not sure about this. We fear that our settlement will become more expensive because of this thing you put inside, or we are scared about this. In order for these discussions to happen, you need to do something like this. So the whole thing we did was very experimental and very much new, like that. That's one example, but there were many.
That's very kind and compassionate of you to doing it this way. And I think that's a true example of participatory design process, a project that has been accomplished through the process. And a lot of people must have learned how to do it in the process with you.
Yes.
Lovely. So you're working in the intersection of social and physical dimensions of space. What would you like to elaborate? What do you mean by this with a few examples?
Mm. Sure, I can give you one example to connect to the RISE project before. So social and physical aspects of space are always interconnected. And as I mentioned, we had these pumps that we had to install in these settlements these pumps would be gathering all the black water, black water means water from our toilets. And from our toilets. They would be gathering all that. So all toilets, actually, let's say up to 7 toilets would be connected, up to 7 houses would be connected to these pumps. They would collect this black water and then they would pump it to something called a wetland. And wetland is like artificial constructed wetland where we would plant plants that have root structures through which this black water would slowly, actually it would go first to the septic tank. First treatment happens there, then it goes to the wetland, slowly filters through these roots and becomes much cleaner on the other end. So that water can be used then to, for example, wash your motorcycle or water your garden. So that was the whole idea of the project, that we collected this black water. But in the beginning, the engineers only thought about the technical aspects of this challenge. So how many houses can you connect to one pump? Let's call it pump. One pump, and how close those houses need to be, right? Like something very technical. So the pump doesn't block, so it becomes, it can function for a long time. And those are very important aspects. But what participatory design allowed us to do when we were there with people working together is that we realized that it's not that simple, because there's this belief that if someone, a neighbor that you're not in a really good relationship with, will get access or somehow connect with anything that comes from your body, so your fecal material or anything, they could that can mean something bad. So they can that can bring some misfortune to you. So people did not want to connect with anyone who is not their family. So only families wanted to connect together, or very, very good neighbors. So someone who has been a good neighbor for many years, right? So not some new relationships. So that means that in the initial plan, how we wanted to connect these houses to the pumps was useless. And if we connected it like that, people would not want to use toilets, because, for example, if you and I are not a family, I would not want my toilet to be connected in the same pump with your toilet, because that can bring misfortune to me. So then what we needed to do is map family trees in a settlement, and see who is related to whom, a cousin of whom, and then revise the initial pump arrangement so that we only connect the same family to the same pump. And then we made sure that the pumps are actually going to work. So I think that's a great example of how the social and the technical connect together.
Awesome. And making such efforts is a struggle of its own. And accomplishing this would have been an amazing way of building trust with people. and
Yes, for sure.
making something work for sure. Lovely.
Mm.
Great example. Okay, this is very inspiring as well for other professions and people like me to be more compassionate and more considerate about people we are trying to work with. Because doing something for them is is an act of service. It's less about accomplishment of our own. It's more about an act of service. So you're a great leader.
It's so important to make people comfortable to share these very personal things with you. Like, I mean, I'm going to share another example that really was something that is very different from my culture, and it's a very intimate example. So, for example, in those settlements where we worked, women, young, all women, their menstrual pads, they actually wash them before they throw them away, even though they're single-use menstrual pads. Because if you throw your, let's say, blood, any organic matter in the rubbish, that means that someone can take it and do some voodoo magic or something on it. And people really believe that. Like, it's really important for people there. I'm not saying it's not true. I think it's true for them. It's their reality. And if you and it takes a lot of you need to be, as a professional, I think, able to make people comfortable to share that with you. That's something very intimate to share. And you need to make sure that's your responsibility, that you want to know, you want to ask the right question. So you can then better understand how can you help them manage their waste in a sustainable manner? How can you help them manage their water in a settlement in a sustainable way? It's not enough just to bring your own ideas, but really make them feel comfortable to tell these things to you.
Great lesson. Thank you. And okay, so these questions were solely for you, and they were amazing lessons. Thank you so much for making time for sharing them. And also, we will link we'll add the links in the description box because you highlighted some very important projects as well. Okay, so there are now few quick questions I ask everyone to know more about them personally. So, what drives you? What
Okay.
keeps you focused on the work that you do?
That's a difficult one. What was I thinking? I was thinking a little bit before about some things that you may ask me. What drives me? I don't know. I think this what I told you. Finding the right question, because you can see how people just light up, just open up once when you are able to ask the right question. I think that's the thing, and it's really as simple as it sounds, and very difficult. It's simple, like, okay, I need to just think of the right question, but that's actually the most difficult thing that you need to come up with. So thinking about that, thinking about the purpose and about the question, that drives me for sure. And seeing that, that you can really make an impact into someone's life, someone's way of thinking.
Right. Okay. So I just point out the one thing in particular, what drives you to actually listen to people and to be there with them for them. What drives you on that? One thing you just mentioned that it brings a change to their life or impact in their lives. Anything else that drives you and keeps you motivated to doing? Because it must involve some frustration or some patience, requires patience as well.
Oh yeah, for sure, definitely. And I think also I am just genuinely curious. I really want to know about everyone and everything. I think that as well. Like, I'm curious. I am so conscious about how I do things in my life, and I am so sure that many other people, even from the same context as I am, like my sister, for example, I'm sure she does things in a different way. So I want to learn how is she doing things. I think that curiosity as well.
Lovely. Okay. I would love to say here that I'm happy to meet you. Just that. Okay, that's
Oh, me too.
thank you. Okay. So any proudest moment of your work life?
Any, sorry?
Any proudest moment of your work life?
Proudest moment. Mm. Um, it was definitely one of my proudest moments after that Rise project, when with that team of my Indonesian family, as I call them, when we met for a breakfast in a coffee shop to just close up everything and talk about things, and that in that closing discussion, I asked them to reflect on the whole process of many years of working together and things that happened to us with different residents. And when in that moment I realized how much they learned, all of them, about participatory design and about everything. I still get chills when I think of that breakfast. I think for me, that's one of the best moments ever. And then similarly, whenever we close a project, I really like to take this moment and reflect on it with my team. And recently I did one in Arup as well called Code is. So when we involve one of our participants, so to say. And I did that also with some interdisciplinary experts from Arup. And when we met in the final meeting, again, how they reflected on the project was really made me proud, really, really a lot, because it was a small project and, in a very technically driven firm, and we explored something very experimental. But for example, an ecologist said how they will never think about their work in the same way, how they are going to really employ these XYZ things we discovered and how they made them feel more comfortable and really kind of showed them the purpose of why they're being an ecologist. And I was thinking, wow, when you actually see how these things you're learning together with other people, how they really make some changes in how they feel things.
Lovely. Okay, and any hardest moment of your work life that you would like to mention?
There are so many. I mean, as you know, participatory design is extremely kind of gives you a lot of satisfaction, but it also gives you so much frustration, and it can be so difficult because people are different and difficult ways of communicating. Misunderstandings happen all the time. So, and maybe the hardest moments are those in which I did not have enough power to do the thing that I thought was the right thing to do. When you work so closely with people and you know what is the right thing to do because you have heard so many things and you have been on the ground every day. And then there is someone else who has power, whether it's a local politician or someone else from the project on a higher position or whoever, that does not have that much contextual knowledge. They may have some knowledge of other things that you don't know about. But when they say or do something that you don't agree with and you cannot do anything in that moment, I had a few of these moments, and those were the moments I think that broke my heart the most, because you're so powerless, you cannot do anything, and then you just have to let it go. And what I learned is that it kind of, you cannot do anything in that moment, but you learn so much from those instances, and somehow in the next project you can build it differently, how to react to these situations. But I don't know if that makes sense, but now I was just thinking about it as I was talking.
It does, and it's relatable as well. And to come back to work even after experiences something like that, it takes some inner motivation and some hope, but keep going is something that gives us a lot of proud moments even after the hardest. So I think that builds our resilience and more energy. Like, I'm fueled with anger most. The emotion that fuels me more to do things is anger and frustration, personally. So yeah.
Yes, there were. I don't want to lie. There were countless days when I would come back from fieldwork crying because I just did not know what to do, or I couldn't cry in the moment because in front of that person I needed to, keep my face. But then, it's difficult. And in these moments, it's so important to have a team that you can rely on and that you can actually together develop strategies to deal with these situations. So never alone, I think, no matter how small the team, but that's, I think, the key secret of resilience.
Definitely, yes. And I have experienced different projects in different manner, and also always having one person got to be at your back or to someone to share with your emotional struggle has been so helpful. I truly believe it. And I'm happy that you have people like that with you. Lovely. Okay, so do you have any favorite placemaking mantra or quote about the work you do?
Yeah, so I'm not really a quote person, even though I think words can be very powerful. What I really like to explore in different projects are different proverbs. Like, I think there is so much wisdom in how we say things through generations. But I was thinking about what I would maybe the one that we have been using in a lot of projects lately. I'll read it out to you. Is by David Attenborough. Do you know who he is? David Attenborough. He's a British naturalist. I think that's how they call him. He just celebrated his 90th birthday, I think, or 90 something birthdays. He's super old now, but since he was young, he spent his whole life recording documentaries, videos about different parts on our planet, about nature. So he was really a powerful figure in Britain, and I think globally, in making nature close to people, like telling people about nature. And there is a very important documentary from him. I think it's either 2022 or 2023, in which he's actually telling people how nature has changed throughout his life, because he started his job as being someone who is just seeing these wild places, and now when he's old, he sees that there is no more wilderness, and it's so sad. This is a disclaimer. It's very moving, but it's also very important to talk about it. So there's this quote of him that says, "No one will protect what they don't care about, and no one will care about what they have never experienced." So we use it a lot as a powerful way to say we need to bring more nature to children, because if children have not experienced this, they're not going to care about it. They're not going to protect it when they become older. They will not become custodians of this. But I think this quote also applies to our public spaces and the way we use them. So if we don't show to people what power a social place can have, a little nature pocket can have, that if you don't show them the power of that moment of encounter with a stranger because of urban design, of a bench, right, they will not be able to know how it feels, and then they will not be able to care about it, and they will not be able to carry it with themselves in the future. And I think that's something that us as urban practitioners really need to think about. This is our responsibility to make people feel these things, otherwise they will not care.
Definitely. And by this, I remember that like this year we started working on the social life project. Like I arrived at it on my own, and the coincidence was that my advisor was mentioning it, like we were having discussion. We arrived at it, and even Fred Kent had arrived at the social life aspect as well. So we all landed on it, and when I was thinking that what is something in Pakistan and I had experienced so much and I want to protect and that we are losing now is the social connections. Because what we had experienced as children were those connections with our elderly people and with the children. And now we are losing it. Now we are seeing the shift happening that the youth and children are losing the connections with other people. And now we are trying to protect that and creating opportunities for more of these things. And that comes back to it that we have experienced it. That's why we are trying to protect it, like me and the people of my age, because we have experienced the life on streets and our children are not allowed to do so. So that's so true. And I would look into the work done by David as well, inshallah. So thank you for pointing out amazing lessons and amazing work that you have highlighted throughout the podcast. So loved it. Okay, so do you have any opinion about Pakistan or placemaking in Pakistan?
Well, to be honest, I have never been to Pakistan and never worked in that environment. So I think I would love to, and I think I would love to come and meet you in person as well, and your colleagues, and maybe I hope there will be an opportunity in the future. So maybe ask me again later.
Done, for sure. Okay, so any message for the young professionals that are joining in?
Definitely. So I think we have all a lot of responsibility if we work in a built environment field, and if we don't take that responsibility, everything is just going to disappear. So it's ours, but we need to own it. We need to do something about it. And there's always a way. And I think collaboration is always the right thing to do. So connect with people and and just do it. And maybe the other piece of advice is about time. So time is something that is flying by, but also some things become more clear with time. So even if you're doing now something that makes no sense, is futile or weird, give it time, and maybe, like a little seed, it needs time to create a little green stem, and then a tree. It needs time to grow a tree, so it needs time to grow an idea or a movement or a space. So have time, but take action. That's my advice.
Great and a realistic lesson. Thank you so much, Dasha. It was such a lovely talk with you, and I've learned so much. It's a valuable conversation that I would cherish, and I believe a lot of people will learn from. So, thank you so much for your time and energy, and for sharing, for being on my show.
Oh, thank you as well, and it was a huge pleasure for sure. I hope we keep these discussions going.
Definitely. I'm happy to do it. I'm honored to do it. So, take care and bye bye.
Bye.